Hi, salam shalom, peace, fellow hippies, west or east. Okay, um, this I wanted to talk a little bit about Islam and culture. It seems that a lot of people are really tired of religion getting mixed up with culture, and I don't think it's really just a problem with Muslims or Islam, but something that's across the board that people have vented to me that oftentimes people get culture and religion mixed up. And it seems to be like a symptom of ignorance. And I used to, I used to really adhere to that viewpoint, that religion needed to be, or Islam needed to be pure in order to get the message out. But then I realized, and through a couple of years, and I guess being intensely, I strictly just conforming to rules and regulations and laws and what I thought was right, it kind of made me unhappy. And I realized that culture and religion are not necessarily a bad thing when mixed up together. I mean, obviously, there are limits, meaning that culture doesn't go over the foundations of Islam. Um, and But the thing is that culture and religion aren't necessarily a bad thing. I think what's more dangerous is thinking that Islam can, or trying to make Islam puritanic and trying to make it pure. I think that's more dangerous, and that's kind of foolhardy, to be honest. There's this great quote that once I first read it, I didn't really understand what it meant, but I don't know. Sometimes you just realize when you hear truth, or you hear someone speak truth, that it makes sense to you. So the quote goes like this: quote, Islam showed itself to be culturally friendly, and in that regard has been likened to a crystal clear river. Its waters, Islam, are pure, sweet, and life-giving, but have no color of their own, reflect the bedrock indigenous, aka indigenous culture over which they flow. In China, Islam looked Chinese, and Mali, it looked African. Sustained cultural relevance to distant peoples, diverse places, and different times underlay Islam's long success as a global civilization. And that's by scholar uh, Umar Farooq Abdullah, like mashallah. And I think he's a scholar as well, a very influential scholar. And I just think that really paints it really perfectly. For instance, I think Muslims kind of get overwhelmed and confused by the different schools of thought. And they think that, for instance, in my family, for instance, we have Jews and Christians and different things like that. And as I know in the Jewish side of my family, we talk a lot about different scholars saying this is kosher, this isn't kosher, and basically you can get a scholar saying, this is kosher, that is kosher, or or just get a scholar that will say that you can do something, almost everything. And to be honest, I was kind of confused, and I was wondering, well, isn't Islam basically the same thing with, or Sunni Islam basically the same thing with having these four schools of thought, and, you can just go to any school of thought, like pick and choose and that sort of thing. And it was then later on that I had the privilege of going to Reviving the Islamic Spirit conference, and they were talking about how there are different schools of thought, but they agree to disagree, and each one knows that they're not perfect, but they just try and give a framework. And each scholar and each Sahaba actually went to different parts. Like, for instance, there were only like a certain number of Sahaba, like in Egypt or in Persia and other places. So different schools of thought only could only pick from those different Sahaba that were around them, and that was just something that was a mercy to God, and that difference and culture and difference amongst people are not necessarily punishments, but they're actually mercies, and that Islam is created for all people and is very wide and encompassing religion, and that if you're from one culture or another, that it doesn't mean that you have to be pure. There's no such thing as pure Islam. Culture and the way that we view the world is something that's a gift from God, and that we shouldn't see it as some evil or deviant thing. So I don't know. It's taken. I don't know. Seeing that in that viewpoint, it's made it a lot more happier for me, and has made me help and appreciate the diversity that God's given to this world. So thank you for listening. If you've been